Good evening, everyone. My name is Doug Reside, and I'm the curator of the theater division here at New York Public Library for the Performing Arts. 2 years ago, like a lot of you, I was sitting home alone, and I was looking for what theater I could find online. I had previously worked kind of with or alongside a guy named Josh Gelb on a research project related to the musical The Black Crook, which is a shared interest of both of ours. Josh was putting together a really exciting new making of musical about the show, and so we chatted a bit. I did one of his talkbacks, and we became Facebook friends. And then as I was sitting, as many of us were in March and April of 2020, kind of doom scrolling through social media, this incredible video of Josh going upside down in a closet that also appeared to be going upside down in a different direction appeared on my feed. And so I subscribed to whatever this was, and over the next year or so, year and a half, some really amazing, I guess we call it theater, I guess we call it live performance, it's hard to tell exactly, as I'm sure Josh will talk about, appeared, and I really loved what I saw. One of my favorite musicals of the last 2 years is actually a piece that Theater in Quarantine did with Heather Christian's score for a piece called I'm Sending You the Sacred Face, which is still available on YouTube and I think on Bandcamp. It's a really interesting kind of oratorio maybe of Mother Teresa. Anyway, check it out. It's great. So when we reopened the library, I wanted to bring Theater in Quarantine here to see what it would look like if we did it live on stage in person. It's always live, but with a live audience, just to see kind of the magic behind the computers. We'd planned this, I think, last spring, and then Omicron hit, and we had to push it back again. Till finally, here we are today, and one of the programs that I'm so excited about to finally present. Hurrah! So Josh, as I already mentioned, Joshua William Gelb is a director, performer, and creative technologist. He holds a master's in directing from Marianne Weems's Future Stages program at Carnegie Mellon. If you don't know Marianne, her company, the Builders Association, is actually preserved in the archives upstairs, so check them out. Josh has participated in the Lincoln Center Directors Lab, and prior to the pandemic, he created both The Jazz Singer and, as I said, The Black Crook in residence at Abrams Art Center. While his Drama Desk-nominated adaptation of A Hunger Artist, created in collaboration with Sinking Ship Productions, continues to tour. Katie Rose McLaughlin is a freelance choreographer and director for theater, opera, film, and viral TikTok videos, as well as an artistic director of the Designated Movement Company. And she's also the associate choreographer for the 8-time Tony Award-winning musical Hadestown. Together, they are the co-creative directors of Theater in Quarantine, which is a Drama League award-winning performance laboratory dedicated to the exploration of the live theatrical experience in the digital space. Founded by Gelb in response to the pandemic, Theater in Quarantine has developed live-streamed dozens of visually distinctive original works to its YouTube channel, working out of a closet in East Village that's only 8 square feet. And we've actually recreated that closet on stage today. It's a little larger than it is in reality. So today, they're going to present several pieces, and their first piece they've asked me to introduce, it's called People Mover, and it's actually Josh's warm-up for when he's working in the closet. On these screens and on your screen if you're at home, you'll see the closet spinning, except Josh will have no idea where it's going to turn next. The computer is operating randomly, and it's up to the performer to keep up. And as soon as I press a button that I think is hanging out somewhere, let's see, Katie Rose? Perfect. So as soon as I press this button, it's going to begin. So Josh, are you ready? All right.
Yay, yay, yay.
Hey, everyone. Hello.
Hi.
That was People Mover with music by Ellen Winter. And this is our very first Theater in Quarantine in-person performance.
Woo!
You're our very first in-person audience, so thank you. Thank you.
We're so excited that you're here.
Yeah, it's been a little while making this happen.
It's true.
As Doug mentioned, we were going to do this in November, and then we were going to do this in January, and now here we are, and we're doing this today. And so we want to thank all of you for coming, and we also want to thank all of you who are on the live stream watching right now, our remote audience, thus completing this experiment in theatrical hybridity. What is theatrical hybridity? It's this buzzword that's going around, hybrid. It means that this is being simulcast. It means that this was conceived with two audiences in mind. We have the in-person audience and we have our remote audience, and each audience will have a slightly different experience. So for instance, all of you in our in-person audience will have unfettered access to this behind-the-scenes view of the closet. And our remote audience will have significantly better sightlines.
That went over great.
That went over pretty well.
It didn't go well in dress rehearsal.
No.
We should introduce ourselves.
Oh yeah, we should. I'm Joshua William Gelb.
And I'm Katie Rose McLaughlin.
Ooh. Yeah. Well, so we've been making digital performance for digital audiences since March of 2020, when the pandemic shutdown orders came in. I live alone in my East Village apartment. Save this fellow. And like many of us, I was feeling particularly lonely, trapped, uninspired, watching a lot of Zoom readings. And I noticed that the closet in my apartment had a similar aspect ratio to my iPhone. And I realized that with just like a little reinforcement and a little white paint, I could turn that into a digital proscenium.
And so Josh called me up and he was like, hey, I turned my closet into a theater. Do you want to make something? And I was like, sure, of course. I mean, it's Josh, so of course. And then we've been making work ever since.
So this is not the original closet. This is our touring closet, which has appeared in several of performances that we've streamed to YouTube.
Yeah, we did Blood Meal at La Mama, and we did Mute Swan at Culture Hub, all with this closet. And then most recently, we were at the University of Maryland.
And now, it does have similar dimensions. It is 4 feet wide by 8 feet tall. This one is a tiny bit deeper for stability purposes. But I promise you I will only be using the original 2 feet of depth, which is a total square footage of 8 square feet. Now, for tonight's performance, we've chosen a selection of a few short pieces that are favorites of ours, and then that hopefully will give you a sense of the different ways that we use digital video processing.
Yeah, and we're really excited to be in the same room for the first time ever.
So true.
You and me. Usually I'm at home on my computer monitoring the feed and monitoring the chat. So those of you at home, I will continue to monitor the chat. But yeah, so it's really exciting for us to be in the same room.
Yeah. In fact, really, this is the first time we are opening up this portion of the process to anyone. So we want to thank you again. We want to thank the New York Public Library for the Performing Arts for having us today and for presenting Theater in Quarantine for the very first time out of quarantine. Roll titles.
I manage a small... I manage a small business. 2 employees with typewriters and ledgers in the front. And in the back is my office with a desk and a cash box, conference table, club chair, a telephone. It's everything I need. Easy to inventory, easy to manage. I'm young and business is good. I don't complain. I don't complain. But ever since New Year's, there's this young man who rented the space next door, which, stupidly, I hesitated to rent it myself. There was 2 rooms just like mine, and also a kitchen. I could have expanded the business, and then my employees have fussed about the workload. But what would I ever do with the kitchen? This particular concern, the obvious cause of my reluctance. So now, this young man sitting there, his name is Harris. What is he doing? I don't know. The door reads Harris, Inc. I asked around and was told it's a business a lot like mine. Young man, lots of ideas, might even have a future. No red flags to warrant a loan denial or collateral to certify approval, just usual information you give when you know absolutely nothing. Sometimes he passes me on the stairs, Harris. Always in a hurry, always very formal. I mean, I haven't gotten to meet him, but his keys are always in his hand. And in half a second, the door's open. Like a rat's tail, he slips in, and once more, I'm slammed in the face by Harris, Inc. Which are words that I've read a lot more often than they deserve. Awfully thin walls in this building. Walls that betray the honest and shield the fraud. My phone's on the wall that separates me from my new neighbor, a detail I only mention as a particularly ironic fact, since even if it were on the opposite wall, he could still clearly hear everything I'm saying. I've given up calling my customers by name, though it won't take much to guess from all the usual jargon turns of conversation. Sometimes I dance around, anxious, phone pressed to my ear, tiptoeing, knowing there's nothing I can do to keep any of my secrets safe. Naturally, all this has made my business transactions a bit irregular. My voice keeps seizing up. What is Harris doing while I'm on the phone? If I really wanted to speculate, it was just something necessary evil. I would say Harris doesn't even have a telephone. He uses mine. He's pushed his couch against the wall and just listens. So when the thing rings, I'm the one who has to walk over to it, accept the customer's requests, make serious decisions, carry out large-scale operations, and all the while involuntarily reporting to Harris, sitting there in the next room. I bet he doesn't even wait for the conversation to end. He just gets up whenever he's been sufficiently tipped off, scurries through the city the way he does before I even hung up the receiver. He's figured out maybe a dozen ways to destroy me.
I manage a small... I manage a small business. 2 employees with typewriters and ledgers in the front. And in the back is my office with a desk and a cash box, conference table, club chair, a telephone. It's everything I need. Easy to inventory, easy to manage. I'm young and business is good. I don't complain. I don't complain. But ever since New Year's, there's this young man who rented the space next door, which, stupidly, I hesitated to rent it myself. There was 2 rooms just like mine, and also a kitchen. I could have expanded the business, and then my employees have fussed about the workload. But what would I ever do with the kitchen? This particular concern, the obvious cause of my reluctance. So now, this young man sitting there, his name is Harris. What is he doing? I don't know. The door reads Harris, Inc. I asked around and was told it's a business a lot like mine. Young man, lots of ideas, might even have a future. No red flags to warrant a loan denial or collateral to certify approval, just usual information you give when you know absolutely nothing. Sometimes he passes me on the stairs, Harris. Always in a hurry, always very formal. I mean, I haven't gotten to meet him, but his keys are always in his hand. And half a second, the door's open. Like a rat's tail, he slips in, and once more, I'm slammed in the face by Harris, Inc. Which are words that I've read a lot more often than they deserve.
awfully thin walls in this building. Walls that betray the honest and shield the fraud. My phone's on the wall that separates me from my new neighbor, a detail I only mention as a particularly ironic fact, since even if it were on the opposite wall, he could still clearly hear everything I'm saying. I've given up calling my customers by name, though it won't take much to guess from all the usual jargon turns of conversation. Sometimes I dance around, anxious, phone pressed to my ear, tiptoeing, knowing there's nothing I can do to keep any of my secrets safe. Naturally, all this has made my business transactions a bit irregular, and my voice keeps seizing up. What is Harris doing while I'm on the phone? If I really wanted to speculate, it's just something necessary evil, I would say Harris doesn't even have a telephone. He uses mine. He's pushed his couch against the wall and just listens. So when the thing rings, I'm the one who has to walk over to it, accept the customer's requests, make serious decisions, carry out large-scale operations, and all the while involuntarily reporting to Harris, sitting there in the next room. I bet he doesn't even wait for the conversation to end. He just gets up whenever he's been sufficiently tipped off, scurries through the city the way he does before I even hung up the receiver. He's figured out maybe a dozen ways to destroy me.
So that was The Neighbor. The Neighbor was actually the first piece that we ever did live on YouTube. And as I'm sure you noticed, it's basically the piece repeated. And the reason why we did that was in case the internet went out. Also, which it often did, especially back then. Or if the computer crashed, which it often did. Or if people tuned in late. So we wanted them to be able to see the whole thing. But yeah, so that's a little taste of basically what we were doing in March, April of 2020. The next piece we're going to do is Corners, which was actually the very first piece that Josh and I ever made. Josh had done a number of studies, little drafts of things, and Corners was the first piece that we first full piece that we ever made. And it was really, really influenced around the time that we made it, which was, if you imagine March 2020, things were being canceled. We were all quite nervous. We were disinfecting bananas. We were banging pots at 7 o'clock. And Josh and I were making pieces in the closet. So it's like really influenced by the sense of isolation, the sense of nervousness that we all had. Hi. Yeah. Oh, where's your mic?
So for this piece, this next piece, Corners, we're going to, actually for those people at home, this is really just for them, we're going to include a little unedited version of the closet in the corner of your screen so that you can get a little bit of the sense of what our in-person audience is getting in terms of a behind-the-scenes view that has been completely untouched.
And then the title of this piece, Corners 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, is named after the fact that when Josh and I were working, we were working on Zoom. And because Josh was working in the closet, he was far away from his computer monitor. So he couldn't always see, like if I was showing him choreography, he couldn't see it at all. So I actually had to just like use my words to describe movements that I wanted him to do. But also it was really tricky to be like right hand, left hand, because if he turned around. And so we just named the walls of the closet. So this is wall 1, this is wall 3, this is wall 5. And so I can just be like, Josh, put your foot on wall 1, and then he'll put his foot on wall 1. And then we also named the corners to get super specific. So this is corner 2. And then this is corner 4. And then when we did Mute Swan, we even named this 0 and then that 6. So that's the piece. Please enjoy corners 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So that was Corners. Yeah, Yeah, and Corners we performed as part of Closet Works, which were evenings of short works that we did between like 2 and 7 minutes that were originally presented by the Invisible Dog Art Center. And usually they were more movement-based pieces. I would choreograph a new piece, and then also we would always bring in guest choreographers to make pieces as well. And something that we often did with these pieces is Josh, as we kept making work, Josh would discover sort of new tools and new technologies.
Yeah, so for instance, with Corners, that was one of the first things we discovered are these gravity inversions and how we could really play with which way was up in the closet.
Because originally when we first started doing it, I was just taking my laptop and like literally turning it around to see how it worked.
So we started there and then became more excited by other ways that we could really be using digital in a way that we couldn't say on an in-person stage otherwise. So playing with multiplicity and eventually playing with things like looping, which is one of those things that digital can do better than almost anything, is play with time. So we started being interested in loop capture, and by loop capture I mean capturing a live action with video, sometimes audio, and playing that over and over again. We started based off of experiences that we had working on The Seventh Voyage of Egon Tichy, which was our sci-fi slapstick comedy piece that we created with Sinking Ship Productions. And that sort of climaxed with 23 versions of me screaming at each other, except 22 of them were all pre-recorded and had been pre-recorded for a week. So there was really only one live actor. And we kept asking, how can we make this more live?
Which is a question actually we ask ourselves throughout the process of making every single piece. How can this be more live?
So we kept on pursuing this idea of loop capture with our piece, I'm Sending You the Sacred Face, created with Heather Christian. And in that one, we did one loop with one bit of choreography. And months later, we were doing a piece called The Gas Heart by Tristan Zara that was entirely performed through loop capture, in which everything was part of every single character had been captured live during the 30 minutes of performance. It's a monster.
Check it out. It's on our page.
But before we could do that, we had to work through the kinks, through a process of iteration, through these Closet Works performances, which really became a laboratory for us to explore these technologies and really understand and flex our muscles so that we could adapt them to larger productions.
Yeah, we would call them etudes, and we would basically explore the million different ways, the million different things we could do with this piece of technology, and then, as Josh said, apply it to what we were working on.
So for this Closet Works piece, we called up a friend, incredible songwriter, incredible performer in her own right, Grace McLean, currently in SUFS, and who has been doing just amazing things with audio loop capture for years, and said, hey, would you be interested in writing us a song? And this is that song.
Mostly what I do is make mistakes. I want to be a guarantee, but every straight becomes a snake. Tying nuts in my tongue, sliding into my lungs, suffocating the real until it fakes. Cause mostly what I do is make mistakes. Yeah, 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 yeah. 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 Mostly what I do is fetishize my feelings. Exploit my suffering and call it healing. If I show you my gritty, will you tell me I'm pretty? I want you to revel in my revealing. Cause mostly what I do is fetishize my feelings. Yeah, 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 yeah. too hard. I believe that simply who I am is someone you will disregard. And so I muscle, and so I hustle. I slap but don't let down my guard. Cause what I do is make mistakes. What I do is fetish. Also what I do is try too hard. What I do is make mistakes. What I do is fetish. Also what I do is try too hard. What I know. What I do is fetish. Also what I do is try too hard. What I do is fetish. Also what I do is try too hard. I love a bad decision. Ooh, I love it when it's hastily made. I wanna see the light at the end of my tunnel vision. I wanna make an avocado out of a grenade. I know what I know. What I do is make mistakes. What I do is fetish. Also what I do is try too hard. I know what I know. What I do is fetish. Also what I do is try too hard. I know what I know. What I know. What I know is fetish. Also what I do is try too hard. I know what I know. What I know. What I know is fetish. Also what I do is try too hard. I know what I know. What I know is fetish. Also what I do is try too hard. I know what I know. What I know. What I know. What I know is fetish. Also what I do is try too hard. I know what I know. What I know. What I know is fetish. Also what I do is try too hard. I know what I know. What I do is fetish. Also what I do is try too hard. I know what I...
Yeah. So that was mostly what I do. The next piece that we're going to do for you to sort of close out this portion is called Klexographic Study, Klexography being the study of ink blots. And this piece came out of a failed piece. So Josh and I were working on a Closet Works. We were working on this piece. We had spent 2 weeks working really diligently on this piece, and it was called Phase 4. We had dress rehearsal the night before the performance, and
It was
Josh,
not. It was not good.
It was not good.
It was terrible.
So bad.
Yeah. It was embarrassing, and so we decided not to do it.
Yes. That was that. So then we had an hour to make a new piece before performing it live in front of our YouTube friends.
And so we did something that we don't usually do, is we played with improvisation.
Yeah, so Josh and I usually, when we make our work, both Josh as a director and me as a choreographer, really sort of meticulously choreograph the pieces that we make. And we were like, okay, we don't have time to do what we usually do. So we decided I made a score for him. I just recorded myself giving him some prompts, and we picked some music, and then we did it all live. Didn't really rehearse.
And to close out this section of the performance, we thought we would make one for you today, one of our series of Klexographic studies. So we're going to build this right now, and to help us, we're going to invite a dear friend, an incredible musician, jazz trumpeter and member of the Westerlies, Riley Mulherker. So welcome up, Riley.
Yay!
Hey, Riley. How's it going?
Good. It's good to see you. Even better to see 7 of you up there. That was incredible.
Thanks. Well, thank you, seriously, for coming. So we're going to do this. Katie Rose is going to create an audio score, improvise one right now. I'm going to go off stage and change costume. I'm not going to be listening. I will not hear this. And KR, are you ready?
I'm ready.
Well, then, let's do this.
Okay, imagine that you are a caterpillar. Imagine all of your million little feet, but sort of the blobbiness of your body and the texture. And then you're walking, feeling what it feels like to move your feet. And then you're going to curl up into a nice little ball in a little cocoon. And imagine just taking a couple breaths in that place. And then you're going to emerge rather suddenly as a butterfly. So flying out of that cocoon, and then imagine feeling the air on your skin, your beautiful wings, whatever color they are. You can be a little influenced by that color. And flying, imagine feeling the sunshine on your body. And then the next time you do this, imagine doing it with 25% less energy. You have one somewhere. Oh, here. Thank you so much, Riley.
Thank you, Riley.
Oh,
All right, I'm going to change costume, but we're going to do a little bit of a Q&A right now. So, Katie Rose, you take it away.
Awesome. So if anybody has any questions, just raise your hand. And those of you at home, I have the feed right here, so feel free to ask questions, and we will answer them as well. Anybody have any questions? Yes, please. Are we using, sorry, say that again? Oh, are we using LiveLab? That's such a good question. So LiveLab, for those of you who don't know, was developed by Culture Hub, who we worked with a fair number of times. We are not using LiveLab. We tried, and it never quite worked for what we're doing. But look up LiveLab. There's no lag in the feed, is the technology that they invented. High recommend. Oh, we're using Isadora, and we're using QLab. Yeah. Great question. Anyone have any other questions? Yeah, please.
So, ever since I read this Times review about a year ago, I was wondering if I ever meet you in person.
Yeah.
And that occurred today. But even though Josh partially answered this question talking about the hybrid model, I'm still compelled to ask you this. Was that form of art a temporary solution while the live performances were not possible? Or are you thinking of it as a new form of art that will still exist while the performing community and us viewers return to life?
That's a very good question, and I think that's why we're here today. We're trying to figure that out.
Yeah.
It's obviously a very interesting transitional time, particularly for artists like us, digital artists, who kind of emerged during the pandemic against many odds. So in that respect, we are trying to figure out what the future has in store for what we've discovered. That being said, I don't think digital is going away in our lives or in our art. So clearly it's something, well, that's a great idea. It's something that we as 21st century theater artists should probably be contending with and should continue to do so. And there's a lot of benefits, obviously, to digital. Beyond this sort of more aesthetic stuff that we're talking about, accessibility is so important when we talk about reaching new audiences, audiences beyond local audiences, audiences who couldn't come to the theater in the first place or couldn't access it. So that's just so, that's this whole other element of digital that I think is really important and we should keep pursuing. I'm gonna sit down.
Okay, I'm going to ask a question from the, I just needed to type something. Jane, if you could tell me a little bit more about the question that you asked, I will answer it. Barry Gillis says, Josh and Katie Rose need to print shirts and mugs that include the epic instruction from Katie Rose. You're going to merge rather suddenly as a butterfly and use the funds to support TIQ. Thank you, Barry. And Rita asked the question, where did Josh put all his clothes that had been in his closet?
Well, this is the dirty little secret. I have 2 closets.
Yes.
So I am, first of all, it's wonderful. I want to compliment you both. This
Thank
is
you.
my first experience with it, so it's great to be here. But I'd also like to ask, because I am a novice, so I'd like you to explain in the last piece that you did, who is deciding what splits where and how? Because that was an improvisational piece that you just did for the first time, am I correct?
Absolutely.
So therefore, the other things I think are planned, and I understand that you choreographed those, and I understand how that, who decides this and who is doing that, as it splits and does and morphs into the blobs, the brochure?
Also, real quick, there was a request online to please repeat or summarize the questions from the audience.
Oh, so sorry. Good. Yes. If I'm correct, you're asking sort of what the structure of the improvisation was in the last piece.
I understand how improvisation is done in the structure. I'm asking digitally.
Oh, sure.
How that structure is. I'm not asking how you worked as an artist to create that. I think that's what you did. So I'm asking who is making those decisions to split the screen at what time and where?
Absolutely.
To make it artistically what it was.
Clarifying that for the remote audience, it's really more of a question of the digital element of the improvisation and who or what is controlling that. In this particular instance, Klexographic studies, we've always used that those 4 mirrored images of me, which sort of gives it that ink blot feeling. I think what you're particularly asking about is when like the trumpet player would appear. And that was pre-programmed just to give it a sort of sense of structure. I had built that beforehand, not knowing exactly what he would be doing in the closet at that moment, but just anticipating that we wanted to capture, that's why he was in the closet, we wanted to capture him, and that we knew that would incorporate. We have been playing a lot more recently with digital improvisation as well, which is really exciting when we start thinking about the ways that the computer can improvise along with the performer. In a residency at UMD a couple months ago, we were finally working with motion tracking so that the computer could actually register the performer. And, as always, we start with things falling down. I was able to just cue the computer and vice versa, basically, to knock over the closet and respond. So that stuff we're playing with now is how to actually make that even more responsive.
Thank you.
Of course, thank you. In the back, the way back, that's you, John.
Okay, I just want to build on what she was asking, and just to clarify. So what you're saying is that, like in all the pieces that we watched right now, when it cut and all the video, like there's no one at home who's doing any live mixing. All those things are like pre-programmed, and you are just staying on time and in sync to the score, and the computer has a program that knows to go to add screen 2, screen 4, like that.
Yeah, so John's a dear friend of Theater in Quarantine. John is kind of clarifying that all of the video work is sort of pre-programmed, and yeah, absolutely, that's correct.
And it's pre-programmed, meaning that no one is at home doing it. Josh isn't doing it in front of us. Everything that you see is exactly what's happening.
Yeah. So I call it sort of a pre-edit. We talk about post in making films. So what I do is I work on the computer before I perform it, or in conjunction with rehearsing it or devising it, build out the sequencing, and then kind of fit the live actor into that. Now, you're probably also noticing that I have these in-ear pieces, and those are what are telling me what the video is doing. When we're working with text, for instance, like a full play, I also feed the text into my ears so I can synchronize with the video, and that's how we do it. Kenzie.
Revisit. I was just interesting watching The Neighbor and remembering where I was, and it like brings back like my body physically has like a little bit of trauma from that, so it must be interesting as a hard, like as having worked on these during such a traumatic time, to now be revisiting with an actual audience in mind? Like, I'm just curious how both of your, as you were revisiting it, you kind of had little flashbacks to where you were originally, or how that felt.
That's a beautiful sentiment. Rephrasing it for remote, what is it like? This is a really horrifying activity to have to rephrase these beautiful questions. But what is it like revisiting a piece like The Neighbor, which sort of evokes an extreme bodily reaction to being at the beginning of the pandemic? Well, I think it's fascinating that I fell out of the closet during that one, which is really one of the first times I've done that in a long time, or I fell just out of frame, which is like a cardinal sin to me. And I think it's something I've been struggling with as I've re-rehearsed that particular piece. It's just like something feels a little small about the space, and my body just kind of wants to expand a little bit more. And it's tricky. Yeah?
And I feel like part of it, like you said, having a reaction in your body to what you felt at that point in time. A lot of what I talked to Josh about is like connecting to his breath, which part of that feels like opening yourself up to those memories that are stored in your body. That as long as you can like really breathe and sort of relax into the movements, that those emotions come out.
Yes.
Accidentally philosophical question for you. So
Here we go.
Pedantic nature of it. I'm really struck by like the role of the performer in the piece, and part of that is because the credits are like so conscious about, like there's a conscious intentionality behind the way the credits are put together and the way that you're talking about everyone involved. And the word performer or performed by is never a part of that. And meanwhile, there's a human being working very hard and doing a tremendous amount of sweating in front of those of us in the in-person audience. So I'm thinking a lot about agency and sort of the way in which like the QLab auto continue has like this agency that takes something away from the performer. And I'm thinking about the way you're dressed, and it's reminding me of Butoh and like that sort of way of dealing with trauma and prompts and emotions. So I'm curious, based on this accidentally philosophical question.
This is great.
Okay, so I'll begin again. I apologize. I'm in the summer between 2 years of a theater MFA, so I'm just, I'm a glutton for this sort of punishment. But so my question was the role of the performer, in part inspired by the fastidious credits and the way in which everyone is acknowledged and performance is acknowledged, but the performer, the human being embodying all of this, who for those of us in person is very much having a good schwitz in front of us, is not explicitly called out. And thinking a lot about agency and the way in which the computer is in control, and then also the sartorial choices, the mask, thinking a lot about Butoh and sort of how that was an art form that was sort of created out of trauma and all of that, and like what is the agency of the body that's doing the performing of all of these other things? What are your thoughts?
I love it. I believe you phrased it as an accidentally philosophical question at the beginning, and it is, of course. It's funny, I hadn't really thought about Butoh as an influence, but I love thinking about this as a sort of performance of trauma, effectively. I think in many ways the outfit, and in some ways it is a Russian gas mask, by the way, evoke a sort of Meyerholdian style. For those of you unfamiliar, Meyerhold was a disciple originally of Stanislavski and then broke away and was a sort of extreme physical theater director. And in his sort of building of what was called biomechanics, this sort of performance style is not exactly the word to describe it. They often wore sort of these workman outfits. So in that respect, as we talk about agency of the performer, I often I use the word performer. I use the word puppet in a way that most puppeteers actually resent. Because in some ways, I would say I am a puppet to the digital, to the computer. Of course, I am in many ways the puppeteer because I'm doing all the programming. But when I'm up there, ultimately, as performer, all I can do is sort of ride an obstacle course out to completion, particularly with our longer form shows. Something I find a little ironic as we talk about the difference between the in-person experience and the remote experience is the fact that the remote audience doesn't quite see the schwitz. And people talk about, how the effort feels different.
Totally.
Digitally.
And I don't know if this is on. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Great. Awesome. When we talked about wanting to perform in person in front of people, the thing that Josh and I were most excited about is letting you all watch the amount of effort that Josh puts into these pieces. Once I was in the same room as him, but not watching him for a rehearsal, and all I could hear was just the closet being banged, hearing him breathing, and I was like, this is going to be so interesting when we figure out how to do it in front of an audience.
So thank you. That's an amazing question.
I have hold on for just 1 second. We're going to ask a couple of these questions on the internet, but you next.
We promise.
I know, I'm so
we
sorry.
Promise.
I'm sorry. Okay.
You say pose,
So well done, Jeff. Okay, so a couple questions. Jane was asking if the audience sees the looping on a screen. And the answer, the looping, and the answer is no. The audience sees exactly the same thing that you saw, which is Josh doing the things, and he's using the button to capture. Mm-hmm. And then someone asked something. Oh, and then someone asked if everything is pre-programmed, why do you have to press the button during Mostly What I Do?
Oh, that's a really good question on Mostly What I Do. Because the very first time we performed Mostly What I Do, we performed it with Grace remoting in live. So actually it was built with a button to be responsive to her improvising through her own very recently composed song. So that's why it's a button-driven piece. Now we're working off a recording, but obviously we keep it. We keep it with the button just in case Grace ever wants to come back.
Sorry. Rita asks, when you perform live, how big a space are you in, i.e. how many audience members are usually in attendance? Well, Rita, this is the first time that we've ever done this in front of an audience, and I don't know how many of you are here. So yeah, this is our first time doing it.
Yeah. Right. Jeff?
Oh, sure. Well, I'm not even going to try to pretend this is a question, but having seen many of the pieces online, they are, I think, innately, because of the technology, cool, finished, intriguing, slick. What you've done now by adding the live component is an exponential advance. Because in addition to the difference between the two media, the sweatiness, if you will, the amount of information that we're having to process is exponentially more complicated. And just two things that pop out is having to map the gravity in the finished image versus the gravity in real time, and then having to assemble the pieces that we're seeing, specifically your body, and reintegrating them into the finished image. And you know what? You guys can't see it, and your remote audience can't see it, but we can see it, and it's absolutely stunning.
Thanks, Jeff.
Thank you, Jeff.
What time is it?
It's time.
Should we do one more question and then yeah?
Yeah, one more question.
One more question.
I just want to ask for you two, Katie and Joshua, what were your 2 moments or 1 moment each of like your greatest triumph throughout the process of putting all of this together? Like if you have one favorite moment, I know that's hard to choose, but one that sticks out to you the most.
Theater in quarantine as a whole, or like tonight? Great. My answer is actually Klex, which you saw, because Josh and I were like, this piece doesn't work. So some people would just be like, well, we're gonna put a lesser piece out because we don't have time. And Josh and I were like, no, this piece doesn't work. How do we figure out how to make a piece that we feel strongly about? And we put together like one of our favorite pieces that we've ever made, which just felt really exciting to like trust our artistic instincts and just keep working until we got it right.
Yeah, I do always say that that's my favorite piece. Agreed. Gosh, I wish I had an answer to that, because it's been a sort of like deeply strange time. Even just like the past 2 days, having gutted my apartment to bring everything here has been deeply disorienting. And so the past 2 years feels like it's been one very long drunk weekend. So I truly don't even know. Gosh. I mean, I think in some respects, like I'll give an answer that has an article attached to it, so that's easy. When we did a piece called Blood Meal, it was with a remote performer who was at La Mama in this closet. And I was in my closet, and we were trying to synchronize each other to do a twofer, a two-hander. And it was not working. The tech did not work.
It was the day of a giant snowstorm, too. So it was...
Yeah.
We thought maybe it was that.
Yeah, we did. And we were screaming sort of at each other. We could sort of hear one another. We were getting our dialogue in each other's ears. And we couldn't tell why the other performer was performing so badly and so desynchronized with the other. And it took us a very long time to realize that it was the synchronicity of the sound and that we were having trouble, actually hearing. And finally, we called in a sound engineer named Alex Hawthorne. They've been a great designer with us, as well as sort of an incredible sound mind, put together some software for us for this very reason, because they figured out how to flip a little switch, and suddenly we could hear one another. And suddenly, we were breathing with the speed of comedy that you think can only happen, in a room together. But we were doing it across town. And it was something that we had failed doing months before, and suddenly, within moments, we were able to do the entire show. And
it was right at 5 o'clock, we were gonna call it and say we weren't gonna do it. And it was literally 4:45, and Alex was like, oh, if I just flip this switch, and everything worked.
So thank you. The thing is, we do have one more for you, if you're interested. This is a sockless one.
Yay! Sometimes Josh forgets to take his socks off, and then we all get really nervous. So some sort of pandemic. You know how we all are listening to a lot of music, spending a lot of time doing things we've never done before. Spotify suggested the Westerlies, which is this incredible band that Riley is a part of. And yes. I fell in love with them, and I was like, Josh, we should make a piece to the Westerlies. And Josh was like, I know Riley. So that was really exciting. And we made this piece, yes. We made this piece called Rue, which you'll see us do. Did I stall enough? I think so. You ready to go? Yeah. Awesome. Enjoy Rue.
Thank you.